Now let's talk about VEX and VOPS. VEX is a Houdini native scripting language. Its VEX means the vector expression language. Let's see how we can write some codes inside of Houdini. So in here, let's create a geometry node and let's dive inside. And in here, VEX comes in two flavors. We have this pure VEX code, and you can write the pure VEX code by using this attribute wrangle node. So let's add a attribute wrangle node. And if I enable the parameter, and here as you can see, onto the VEX expression, here we can start writing our own VEX code. And we also have a node called attribute VOP. Let me create an attribute VOP node in here, and that is this attribute VOP node is used for the node based scripting. Okay, it's a visual scripting, and we can do so. We need to dive inside. It is another context of Houdini, the VOP context. Okay, so right now here as you can see, we are at the geometry level, which means we are in the SOP context, and to access these nodes, we need to dive inside this. So I can press enter to dive inside. And here as you can see, we are in the VEX builder context. And in the VEX builder, here we can lay down nodes and start scripting our program. And if I enable this node menu, here as you can see, we have this node menu referent. And it's the same VEX builder context that we have in the material context, because the VEX is a shading language. Originally it was built for building these shaders. So which means I can create a principal shader in here. If I create a principal shader, and here as you can see, we have a shader. And that is because it was originally built for the shading. So let me remove this. We're not going to build shader in the attribute VOP, but I just added the principal shader to let you know that we are in the same context. Okay, so let me remove this. And when we dive inside the attribute VOP, we have these two nodes. We have this geometry VOP global and we have this geometry VOP output. So the geometry VOP global is, we have some of these attributes imported for us, and I will explain all of you in a minute. First, let's maybe remove both of them. So now we have this empty VEX builder. We can go back. Here we are in the attribute VOP node, and we can dive inside. It's nothing here. And we have this way writing our own pure VEX code by using the attribute wrangle. So first, let me create a sphere node in here. I'm going to create this polygonal sphere. That is a very basic type of geometry. If I middle mouse button, and currently we do not have any attributes. We have the P to store the position of these points to make this sphere. Okay, we always have P, but other than that, we do not have any attributes. We can create the attribute. We know that by using the attribute create node. If I add an attribute create node, I can connect this, and we know that we can type the name of the attribute and class where we want to store and the type and all of these things. Now let's see how we can create the attribute using the VEX method. So first I'm going to connect the attribute VOP node. So we have multiple inputs, and we will take a look at that. Why do we have all of these inputs? But first I'm going to just plug this into the very first input of the attribute VOP, and we need to view the result of this attribute VOP. And to actually start writing our code, our node based scripting, we need to dive inside this. So double click, and here as you can see, we have this VEX builder. And in here, first I want to create the attribute. And the way that we can create the attribute by using the bind export node. So here I can type the bind export. Here as you can see, we have these two nodes. We have the bind and bind export node. Bind node is used to import the attribute, and bind export is used to export the attribute. Because we want to create the attribute, so let's add a bind export node. and let me enable the parameter. And here we can define the name of our attribute that we want to create, and I'm going to rename this our my attribute. And here we can define the what are the data type that we are going to store. Okay, so my attribute is a float or it's a vector string, and you can change the type by clicking here. And here as you can see, we have quite a lot of types. So first we have the float, integer, and we have some other data types, and we have the vector, and we have the color, which is also an a vector. But right now we are just creating an a float attribute, and in here we have the default values. So the default value is right now is 0. So let's maybe keep this 0, and now we can go back, and in here if I press and hold the middle mouse button, and here as you can see, the attribute is not there, and that is because we need to dive inside and onto the my attribute, and onto the parameter. Here it says export when input is connected. So it means that it's saying that it will only export the attribute when this node is connected. Okay, this input, it expecting the input, but right now currently we do not have an a input. If I want to use this value, I can say onto the export, I can change this to always. So which means that no matter if this input is connected or not, you are just responsible for exporting the attribute. So now we should be able to see attribute if I press and hold the middle mouse button, and here as you can see, we have my attribute, and it is an a float attribute. Its value is right now is 0. We can check, we can go into the geometry spreadsheet, and here we have the my attribute, and its current value is 0. I can change this to any value, maybe let's change this to 7, and here as you can see, we have the attribute. I can change the type, I can change this to integer, and now we have these integer values. And here as you can see, as I am changing this, I have my attribute is corresponding. I can change this to string. Let me find where is the string. So here we have the string, and which means I can type anything. Let's say hello world, and here as you can see, we have our hello world attribute as a string. Let me change this back to float, and in here let's go back, and right now here as you can see, we are creating an a point attribute. What if I want to create an a primitive or an a vertex attribute? How we can do that? And we can do this if we enable the parameter of this attribute VOP, and here as you can see, we have this run over. Right now we are running this attribute VOP onto the points, so which means everything that we are going to do in here, whatever the codes that we are going to write, these nodes we are going to add, they will operate on points. So if I were to play around with my primitives, or I can create a primitive attribute, I just need to go into the run over and change this to primitives, and now I should have an a primitive attribute. So if I press and hold the middle mouse button, and here as you can see, now we have an a1 primitive attribute, and it is my attribute, that is the name of our attribute. And same way I can change this to detail, and now I should see an a1 detail attribute. So that's the run over method. I'm going to change this to points, the default, and now let's see how we can create the same attribute with this attribute wrangle method. So let me connect this, and in here let me view the result of the attribute wrangle, and let's bring up the parameter. And in here, the way that we can create the attribute, we need to learn the syntax of the programming language of the VEX. So the syntax of creating the attribute is that first you need to define the data types. So what kind of data type that we are going to store. So we know that we have the data type float. So let me open the notepad in here. We know that we currently we were working with these data types. We have float and the integer, and we have the string, and we have the vector. These are the 4 basic data types that we have worked so far. So let's see how we can create all of these data types attributes. So the way that we can do that, first we need to define the data types. And for the float, we just need to type f. F mean that is a float data type. And now in here we need to tell that we want to create a attribute. And for that we need to create a at sign. So the at sign will tell that we are going to create a float attribute. The first f mean the data type, the at mean the attribute. And now we need to set the name of the attribute that we want to create. And I want to create my attribute name, so I just need to type the name. So I'm going to type my underscore attrib. We have first part of this syntax. We have the data type float and at mean the attribute, and after that the name of the attribute. Now we have the name of the attribute. And now we need to say the equal. Now we need to put some values in here. So I want to say that this my attribute, and that is equal to, we need to set the value. For example, I want to save the value of 45. So now that I want the my attribute value to be the 45, and to end the argument we need to add the semicolon. So the semicolon means that now this argument has been ended at this point. And now if I click anywhere in here, and now I have created a my attribute. So I can check if I press and hold the middle mouse button, and here as you can see we have the my attribute, and its data type is float because we had defined in here, and its value should be 45. We can check. Let's select the attribute triangle and go into the geometry spreadsheet, and here you can see the my attribute and its value is 45. I can change this value to anything. So let's maybe change this to 7 and click, and here you can see now we have the my attribute and its value is 7. So that's how you can create your own attribute by using the pure VEX code. And if you want to same way create let's say integer attribute, you just need to type I. Now I mean that I'm going to create an integer attribute, and now the at sign, after that the name of the attribute, and I'm going to calling this one maybe my int. So let's type int. This time I'm going to create another attribute that is name my int, and same way we need to create an equal. So we need to assign some values, put some values in this attribute, and I'm going to put anything value, maybe 78, and to end the argument add the semicolon, and just click in here, and now we should see 2 attributes. If I press and hold the middle mouse button, and here as you can see we have my attribute, it's a float, and we have my int, and it's a integer. I can go and check, and here as you can see my attribute is in a float. I can tell because we have 7.0, and in here we do not have the fractional part, it's a whole number, it's an integer. And same way if I want to create a vector attribute, I just need to type v, lowercase v. V mean we are defining the data type, so data type is vector, so v, after that add sign, and I'm going to calling this one to be my vector. And now we need to assign some values, and because it is a vector we need to add this in these braces because it has 3 values, so it should be in these braces. So first we need to type the x value. The x value I'm going to define the 1, and to separate the next value, which means the y value, you need to add the colon. And now the next value for the y component, for the y I'm going to changing this to 15, and add another column for the third, the z value. I'm going to change this to maybe a value of 98, and we need to end this braces. So now that we have the vector value inside of these braces, and we finally just need to end the argument, and we can end this by adding the semicolon. Now If I press and hold the middle mouse button, here as you can see we have the my vector and it is an A3 float. I can check, I can go into the geometry spreadsheet, and here as you can see we have the my iter float and the integer, and here we have the vector. And it has three components, the 0 which means the x and its value is 1, and because we have set it is to 1, the y value, this second component is 15, yes we have 15, and the last z 98 and we have the 98. And same way, if you want to create the string, we need to type the data type, the string for the data type for the string we need to type the s which means the string, and now the @ which means we want to create an attribute, and now the name of the attribute. I'm going to type this one my string, and now we need to put some values. And for creating the string we need to type this double colon sign. You can type double colon or single colon, both of them will work. For this time maybe I'm going to add in a single colon, and I'm going to put in here hello space world, and to actually end the value we need to end this with another colon, so we need to add the single colon because we started with single colon. And now to actually end the argument, add a semicolon. And here as you can see we have the my string and its hello world. I can check, press and hold the middle mouse button. Here we have the float, now we have this my string attribute, it's a string, and we have the vector. And if you want to create the primitive attribute, you just need to change this from run over from points to primitive. And now here as you can see all of the attribute has been gone from the point level. And I can also check if I press and hold the middle mouse button, and now all of my 4 attribute has been shifted to the primitive level. I can check, go into the primitive, and here we have these attribute my attrib, which is the float, my integer, string, vector. Well, it has 3 components. And same way I can change this to detail, and now I should have these attribute as a detail attribute. So let me go back into the scene view, and if you hit tab and type a wrangle in here, and here as you can see we have quite a lot of these wrangle. We have the attribute wrangle, we have this detail, point, primitive. Basically all of them are these detail, point and primitive are the same wrangle, their preset has been changed in here, this run over method. So if I were to change this one, let's say primitive wrangle, let me type primitive wrangle, here we have the primitive wrangle, let's add this. So what basically that is, its run over method has been changed to primitive. It's the same attribute wrangle node, and here as you can see it says attribute wrangle. If I select this, it says attribute wrangle. You can create an attribute wrangle, and if you decide to run this over primitive, just change this to primitive. Or easier way, you can just type the primitive wrangle and it is already set to primitive. So these are basically the instances of the same attribute wrangle node. And we also have the same instances for the VOP. So right now I have created this attribute VOP node. I can create a primitive VOP, and here we have the primitive VOP. If I add this, so basically it's an attribute VOP, but it's run over set to primitive. And I also have the detail VOP. Here you can see detail VOP and all of the VOP. Basically just run over method has been changed. So let me remove this and onto the attribute VOP. So whenever you are actually whether you write your own code, if you prefer to write the code, or you just lay down nodes and create your own script with this visual way, it's called the visual scripting. It's basically the same thing. So under the hood, when you are creating the attribute VOP and laying down these nodes, the Houdini will automatically write the VEX code for you, and we can view this code. If you come over here onto the attribute VOP and right click, I can go into this view VEX VOP option, and here as you can see we have the view VEX code option. I can click, and here as you can see We are under the hood basically writing down our own VEX code. So it's creating this export float my attrib, and we are assigning the value of 7. It's actually the same. So which means it's just that you are laying down these nodes to actually write your VEX code. Okay, so Houdini is writing the VEX code for you. You are just laying down these nodes. But in the end, it's the same thing. If you use the attribute wrangle, it's the only difference is how you are building your code. If you prefer to write your own pure VEX code, you can use the attribute wrangle to write your own code, or you can just use the visual way of creating your own VEX code and lay down the node, and Houdini will write your code for you. It's the same. So in the next lesson, let's further explore both of these nodes, and we will see where you should use the attribute wrangle or where you should use the attribute VOP.